He kept the spoon for 23 years, but never once told anyone whose hand had held it first. Kent, England, 1968. The rain came softly against the windows of Whitmore House, thin lines of silver running down old glass. Beyond the garden wall, the fields lay dark and wet beneath a November sky, the kind of sky that made even daylight feel borrowed. Inside the study, Colonel Edward Whitmore sat alone at his desk with a white cloth folded beside his right hand. He was 70 years old now. His shoulders had narrowed. His hair, once iron gray, had gone almost completely white. The uniform no longer hung in the wardrobe. The medals had been put away in a drawer his grandchildren were not allowed to open. But every morning, before tea, before the newspaper, before the house began to stir, he unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk and took out a small silver spoon. It was not valuable. The handle was bent near the end. The bowl had a dark stain that no polish could remove. Along the side, almost worn flat by time, were two initials, M.K. Whitmore placed it on the cloth with the care of a man handling something alive. He breathed once. Then he began to clean it. Across the room, his grandson Peter stood in the doorway in his school sweater, holding a book against his chest. He had come in quietly, thinking his grandfather had not heard him. But Whitmore had heard many things in his life. Boots in mud, shells crossing the dark, a prisoner trying not to cry, silence after an order no decent man should have given. "Grandfather," Peter said, "why do you clean that old spoon every day?" Whitmore did not answer at once. The cloth moved slowly beneath his fingers. A small circle, then another. The silver caught the gray morning light and gave back almost nothing. Peter stepped closer. "It looks German," he said. At that, Whitmore's hand stopped. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just enough. Outside, the rain thickened. For a long moment, the study held only the sound of water on glass and the faint ticking of the mantel clock. Whitmore looked down at the spoon as if the years had opened beneath it. "It belonged," he said at last, "to the woman who refused to beg." Peter frowned. He was 12, old enough to know the war had happened, young enough to think it belonged safely to books. He had seen photographs of ruins. He had heard names. Dunkirk, London, Normandy, Berlin. They sounded large and distant, like mountains on a map. "A German woman?" he asked. Whitmore nodded. "A prisoner." Another nod. Peter waited for more. Children often believed stories began with explanations. Whitmore knew better. Some stories began with weather, some with hunger, some with a hand closing around a piece of bread because surrender had already taken everything else. He lifted the spoon. "It was May of 1945, he said. Northern Germany. The war was finished, but no one felt saved." The room seemed to grow colder around the words. He looked past Peter, past the shelves, past the quiet English morning, and saw it again. A temporary prison camp outside Lübeck. Mud everywhere. Rain falling without anger. Barbed wire strung across a field that had once grown rye. British soldiers in wet greatcoats standing beside German prisoners who looked less like an army than the last exhausted evidence of one. Men with hollow faces. Women with gray blankets over their shoulders. The smell of coal smoke, damp wool, boiled turnips, and fear. And among them, a young woman no one noticed at first. Anna Keller, 24 years old. Thin from hunger. Blonde hair darkened by rain and tied at the back of her neck. She wore a patched wool coat too large for her frame and carried herself with the strange stillness of someone who had learned that panic wasted strength. She had no rank worth mentioning, no country left to protect her, no family name that mattered to the British files. Only a small silver spoon hidden inside the lining of her sleeve. Whitmore remembered the first time he saw her. Not because she was beautiful, not because she pleaded, but because everyone else lowered their eyes when the guards shouted. Anna Keller did not. She looked straight ahead, as if defeat were a condition of the body, not the soul. The camp outside Lübeck had not been built to last. It had been assembled in a hurry from whatever the British engineers could find. Timber taken from a damaged warehouse, wire pulled from an abandoned Luftwaffe depot, canvas patched with darker canvas, stoves that smoked more than they warmed. The signs were painted by hand. The latrines were dug too close to the eastern fence. At night, when the wind shifted, the whole place smelled of wet earth and human exhaustion. May 1945. The war was over on paper. In the camp, it continued in smaller ways. A shouted order. A locked gate. A tin bowl held out for food. A number written beside a name. Men and women who had once belonged to a nation, an army, a family, now stood in rows while clerks tried to decide what category of defeated person they were. Anna Keller arrived on the third afternoon of rain. The truck that brought her came from the West Road, coughing black smoke as it rolled between two lines of British military police. 17 women sat in the back beneath a torn tarpaulin. Some wore civilian coats. Some wore pieces of field gray uniform. One had no shoes, only bandages wrapped around both feet and tied with string. Anna sat near the tailgate with her hands folded in her lap. She did not look frightened. That was what Private James Collins noticed first. Collins was 19, from Leeds, with a face still soft enough that older soldiers called him boy when they were tired. He had been in Germany for 6 weeks and already hated the smell of surrender. It was not like victory in the newspapers. It was not flags or cheering or brass bands. It was children digging in rubbish heaps. It was old men pushing carts with broken wheels. It was women standing beside roads with eyes that did not ask for anything because asking had become too expensive. He stood by the gate as the truck stopped. "Out," Captain Thomas Reed called. The women climbed down slowly. One stumbled. Another caught her by the elbow. A third began coughing into a rag that came away dark. No one spoke. Rain tapped against helmets and truck metal and the stretched canvas overhead. Anna was the last to step down. She landed lightly in the mud, then straightened the hem of her coat with both hands. It was a useless gesture. The coat was already stained. The sleeve was torn. Her skirt clung wetly to her knees. But the movement had a strange precision, as if she were entering a room instead of a prison yard. Captain Reed watched her. He did not like precision in prisoners. It looked too much like pride. "Name," he said. Anna looked at the interpreter, then back at Reed. "Anna Keller." "Age?" 24. "Occupation?" There was a pause. "Nurse's assistant." Reed made a mark on the clipboard. His handwriting was hard and slanted. "Military?" "No." "Party member?" "No." Everyone says no now. Anna did not answer. That made Reed look up. He had spent the last month processing men who lied, wept, denied, blamed orders, blamed officers, blamed hunger, blamed fear. He expected collapse. He expected pleading. He had learned to mistrust quietness because quiet people could still hide knives, papers, loyalties, disease. But Anna's quietness was different. It did not bend toward him. It simply remained. Beside the processing table, a British corporal searched the women's bundles. There was little to find. A comb with 3 teeth missing. A photograph blurred by water. A strip of cloth used as a bandage. A rosary without a cross. Half a pencil. When he reached Anna, she handed over a folded piece of linen, a cracked leather purse with nothing inside, and a small notebook whose pages had been ruined by rain. The corporal checked her sleeves. His fingers touched something hard in the lining. Anna's hand moved before she could stop it. Not to strike. To protect. Reed saw it. "What is that?" Anna's face changed then. Only slightly. The muscles around her mouth tightened. Her eyes lowered for the first time, not in surrender, but toward the place in her sleeve where the object rested. The corporal cut the thread with a pocket knife and pulled it free. A small silver spoon, bent at the handle, blackened at the bowl. 2 initials near the edge. M.K. Reed took it from him and turned it over in his palm. "Stolen." Anna looked at the spoon. "No." "Whose?" "My mother's." The rain kept falling. Reed placed the spoon on the table beside the clipboard. To him, it was contraband. A hidden object. A small breach in a place where breaches had to be closed quickly. To Anna, it was a kitchen before the bombings. A linen drawer. Her mother stirring soup on Sundays. A hand resting briefly on her shoulder without needing words. She did not explain that. Explanations were another kind of begging. Reed wrote something beside her name. "Confiscated pending review." Anna looked at him then. Straight at him. For 1 second, Collins thought she might speak. She did not. She only stepped back into line with the other women, empty sleeve hanging against her wrist, rain collecting along her lashes. Colonel Edward Whitmore watched from the office window across the yard. He saw the spoon placed on the table. He saw the woman's face remain still. And he thought, with the cold certainty of a man who believed he understood prisoners, that silence was probably another form of German arrogance. He would remember later how wrong he had been. Colonel Edward Whitmore believed a camp could survive hunger, weather, and confusion, but not looseness. Looseness was how men vanished from work details. Looseness was how disease moved from one barrack to another. Looseness was how a guard looked away for 1 minute and found himself responsible for a dead prisoner, a stolen rifle, a riot. A scandal passed upward through headquarters until some general in a clean office demanded explanations. So Whitmore ran the Lübeck camp with rules. Roll call at 6. Medical inspection before labor assignment. No private exchange between prisoners and guards. No food kept outside ration hours. No personal possessions beyond approved clothing, bedding, and letters already examined by staff. No exceptions without his signature. He wrote the regulations on a board outside the administration hut in black paint that ran slightly in the rain. Every morning the prisoners passed beneath it on their way to the yard. Most did not read English. It did not matter. The board was not for understanding. It was for order. Whitmore had learned order the hard way. Before Germany, before Normandy, before the roads full of surrendered men with their hands raised, there had been London in 1940. Smoke over rooftops. Glass in the gutters. A city standing because it had no other choice. His younger brother, Alan, had died in a basement near Holborn when a bomb took down half the street above him. They found his watch first, not his body. The watch had stopped at 2:17 in the morning. After that, Whitmore stopped believing in easy mercy. Mercy, to him, had become something people requested after they had finished burning other people's houses. He did not beat prisoners. He did not allow beatings. He followed the Geneva Convention with the severe exactness of a man who wanted no one to accuse him of barbarism. But he did not soften. Softness, he thought, belonged to countries not yet bombed. Captain Thomas Reed understood this, or believed he did. Reed was 32, narrow-faced, ambitious, and tired in a way that made him sharp. He had seen Bergen roads lined with bodies no one had strength to bury. He had watched German civilians point at ruins and say they had known nothing. He had processed officers who removed insignia from their collars and claimed to be farmers. By the time he arrived at Lübeck, he trusted paper more than faces. Paper could be filed. Faces changed. Anna Keller's file was thin, too thin for Reed's liking. Name, Anna Keller. Age, 24. Birthplace, Bremen. Occupation, nurse's assistant. Affiliation, none declared. Captured near, Neustadt. Possessions confiscated. 1 silver spoon. Damaged, initials M. K. Reed read the file twice under a leaking roof while rain struck the tin above him. The words did not satisfy him. No one was simply a nurse's assistant anymore. Not in Germany. Not after everything. Someone had carried messages. Someone had signed forms. Someone had looked away. He wrote a note in the margin. Observe. That was how Anna became visible. Not because she spoke. Because authority began looking for a reason to break her silence. Whitmore noticed her too, though he would not have admitted it. From his office window, he saw her cross the yard with the other women, always near the back, always steadying the weakest without making a display of it. She did not rush for soup. She did not argue over blankets. She did not smile when guards tried their schoolbook German. Once, during morning count, an older prisoner beside her began to sway. Anna shifted half a step, just enough for the woman's shoulder to rest against her arm. No one else saw it. Whitmore did. He looked away. Compassion in prisoners made him uncomfortable. It complicated the shape he had given the world. On the 5th day, the rain stopped. The camp did not improve. Without rain, the mud hardened into ridges that caught at boots and bare soles. Smoke from the cookhouse hung low in the still air. The prisoners lined up for evening ration, turnip soup, 1 ladle each, bread if supplies arrived. They had not arrived. A quarrel began near the serving table when a man accused another of taking extra. Reed stepped in fast. His voice cut through the yard. The line straightened. Bowls were checked. Hands were shown. Order returned, but not peace. Anna stood 3 places from the end. She received her ladle of soup in a dented tin cup and a small piece of boiled carrot floating near the rim. She looked at it once, then turned toward the women's barack instead of the eating area. Private Collins saw her. So did Reed. Inside Barack 3, a woman named Elise Bauer lay on the lower bunk, burning with fever, lips cracked, hair pasted to her temples. She had been coughing since morning. Anna had told the guard she needed the infirmary. The guard had told her to wait. Anna did not wait. She carried the soup beneath her coat to keep it warm. 3 steps from the barack door, Reed's voice stopped her. Keller. The yard quieted. Anna turned. The tin cup was hidden badly under the fold of her coat. Steam rose from it in a thin white thread. Reed walked toward her with the calm expression of a man who had found exactly what he expected. "No food outside ration area," he said. Anna's fingers tightened around the cup. "It is for a sick woman. Then she should have reported sick. She cannot stand." Reed held out his hand. Anna did not move. For the first time, Whitmore stepped from his office onto the wooden porch. He could see the cup. He could see Reed. He could see Anna Keller standing in the hard yard, thin as a matchstick, still refusing to release what little she had. Reed's voice lowered. "Hand it over." Anna looked toward Barrack 3, then back at the captain. The camp waited. A small rule had been broken, but something larger was about to be tested. Reed held out his hand as if the matter had already been decided. The cup steamed between them. It was a poor thing, dented at the rim, blackened on one side from some older fire. The soup inside was not truly soup, only water made cloudy by turnip and salt, with one orange piece of carrot turning slowly near the surface. In another life, no one would have crossed a room for it. In Lübeck, men watched it as if it were gold. Anna Keller kept both hands around the tin. "It is for Frau Bauer," she said. Reed's face did not change. "No food is to be removed from the ration line. She is ill. Then she can report to medical inspection in the morning. She may not have morning." The words landed quietly, not dramatically, not like an accusation, just a fact placed on cold ground. A few prisoners looked toward Barrack 3. One woman near the doorway crossed herself with 2 fingers, quickly, almost invisibly. Private Collins shifted his weight from one boot to the other. He had heard coughing from that barrack during the night. Everyone had. A deep, torn sound that seemed to come from below the ribs. Reed heard the movement and turned his head. The yard stilled again. He disliked audiences. Audiences turned discipline into theater. But by then it was too late. The line had stopped. Guards had stopped. Even the cookhouse ladle hung motionless in the hand of the soldier serving rations. From the porch, Colonel Whitmore watched without speaking. He should have ended it at once. That was what he would tell himself later. A commander knew when a rule required firmness and when firmness had become vanity dressed as order. But in that moment he stood under the shallow roof of the administration hut and allowed Reed to proceed, because part of him still believed the German woman's silence needed measuring. Reed stepped closer. "You understand English well enough, Keller." "Yes." "Then you understand the rule." "Yes." "And you chose to break it." Anna looked down at the cup. Steam touched her face and disappeared. "Yes." A murmur passed through the prisoners, no louder than wind through straw. Collins glanced at Whitmore. Whitmore gave no signal. Reed's jaw tightened. "Why?" Anna did not answer immediately. Her thumb moved once along the side of the cup, wiping away a streak of mud. The gesture was small, almost tender, and somehow more troubling than defiance would have been. "Because she is hungry," Anna said. "We are all hungry." "Yes." "And yet the others remain in line." Anna lifted her eyes. "The others can stand." There it was. Not rebellion. Not pleading. A distinction. Reed seemed to dislike that more than anything. He reached for the cup. Anna drew it back, just enough that his fingers closed on air. The movement was not violent. It was not even quick. But the meaning was clear enough for every man in the yard to feel it. Reed's voice dropped. "Do not make this difficult." Anna said nothing. "Give me the cup." Still nothing. The captain looked toward the barracks, toward the prisoners, toward the watching guards. His authority had been touched in public. Not broken. Touched. For men like Reed, that was often worse. He pointed to the mud at his feet. "Put it down." Anna remained still. "Put it down and ask properly." Collins looked at him then. So did Whitmore. Reed continued, his voice colder now, controlled too tightly. "If you want special treatment, you may ask for it like someone who understands her position." Anna's hands tightened around the cup. The steam was fading. No one breathed loudly. Reed stepped aside, leaving a small open space before him, a stage made of mud. "Go on," he said. "Beg." The word struck the yard harder than a shout. Anna did not flinch, but something changed in her face. Not fear, not shame. A door closing somewhere behind her eyes. For a moment, she was not in Lübeck. She was in Bremen before the sirens, standing in her mother's kitchen, while Martha Keller polished the same silver spoon now locked in a British drawer. Her mother had taught her how to fold linen, How to stretch soup for 4 people when there was only enough for 2. How to say thank you without lowering the soul. Then the kitchen was gone, the window blown inward, the table split, her mother's hand cold beneath dust. Anna came back to the yard with rainwater drying on her lashes and a tin cup cooling between her fingers. Reed waited. He expected a whisper, a lowered head, perhaps tears. Most people, starved long enough, discovered that dignity had weight, and weight could be traded for bread. Anna did not trade. You may take the food, she said. Her English was careful. Each word cost effort. You may take the spoon. Whitmore's eyes sharpened. Anna looked at Reed, not above him, not below him, directly at the place where a man decided what kind of man he was. But I will not give you my knees. The yard went silent, completely silent. The kind of silence that did not mean nothing was happening. The kind that meant everyone had heard. For several seconds, Colonel Whitmore did nothing. That was the part he remembered with the most shame. Not Reed's command. Not the mud. Not even Anna Keller standing before half the camp with a cooling cup of soup in her hands. He remembered the pause. The small, cowardly space in which a decent man measures the cost of doing the decent thing. Rainwater dripped from the edge of the administration roof. Somewhere behind the cookhouse, a loose piece of tin knocked softly against wood. No one in the yard moved. The prisoners stood with their bowls half-raised. The guards stared at the ground, or at Reed, or at the woman who had just refused to bend. Private Collins swallowed. He was young enough to still believe officers always knew what to do. That afternoon cured him of that. Captain Reed's face had gone pale beneath the weather and dirt. Not frightened. Exposed. He had asked for surrender and received judgment instead. The worst kind. Quiet. Accurate. Witnessed by everyone. You will not speak to a British officer that way, he said. Anna's hands remained around the cup. I spoke the truth. Reed moved then. Fast enough to make Collins take one step forward. He reached for the soup, not with the clean authority of a man enforcing a rule, but with the anger of someone whose pride had been touched. His fingers closed around the rim of the tin cup. Anna did not pull away. She did not fight him, but she did not release it either. For one suspended moment, they both held it. The captain in polished boots. The prisoner in mud-stiffened shoes. Between them, a cup of turnip water. Then Reed twisted his wrist. Soup spilled over Anna's hands. She drew a breath through her teeth, but made no sound. The liquid ran down her fingers, thin and hot, then fell into the mud at their feet. The carrot landed last. A small orange piece sinking slowly into the brown earth. Something in Whitmore moved. Not pity. Pity would have been easier. This was recognition, and it came like an old wound opening under a clean shirt. He saw, suddenly, not a German prisoner, not a file, not a defeated enemy, but a woman who had been hungry and still thought first of someone hungrier. A woman who had been humiliated and still refused to humiliate herself to satisfy a man with authority. And worse than that, he saw Reed. He saw England's uniform on a man making hunger kneel. Whitmore stepped down from the porch. The boards creaked under his weight. Every head turned. He walked across the yard without haste. His boots sank into the mud. He passed the ration line, past Collins, past the serving table where the ladle still hung motionless over the pot. Reed released the cup. It dropped. Anna caught it before it hit the ground. Whitmore stopped beside them. For a moment, he looked only at the mud, at the spilled soup, at the carrot half buried there like some absurd little casualty of war. Then he looked at Reed. Captain. Sir. Warm another ration. Reed blinked. Sir, the regulation states. I know the regulation. The words were soft. That made them worse. Whitmore turned to Private Collins. Take a full portion from the pot. Add bread if there is any left. Bring it to Barrack 3. Collins moved at once. There was no bread left. Everyone knew it. Still, he searched the crate beside the cookhouse and found a broken heel of yesterday's loaf wrapped in cloth. He looked back at Whitmore. Whitmore nodded once. Only then did the colonel face Reed again. Discipline is not humiliation. No one breathed. Reed's mouth tightened. She violated ration procedure. Yes. She concealed food. Yes. For another prisoner, Whitmore said. The correction was small. It changed everything. Anna stood beside them with her burned fingers wrapped around the empty cup. Her face had gone very white. Whether from pain, hunger, or the effort of remaining upright, Whitmore could not tell. He turned to her. You will take the food yourself, he said. Anna looked at him as if she did not understand the shape of the order. Whitmore repeated it. You will feed the sick woman. Not forgiveness. Not charity. Permission to complete the act for which she had been punished. Collins returned with the ration. Steam rose from the cup. The bread heel rested on top. Dark, hard, real. He handed it to Anna. Her burned fingers trembled when they closed around it. This time, no one asked her to lower her eyes. She turned and walked toward Barack 3. The yard parted for her. Not much. Just enough. Barack 3 smelled of damp straw, boiled wool, and fever. Anna stepped inside with the cup held in both hands. For a moment, the women nearest the door only looked at her. They had heard the voices in the yard. Everyone had. The order, the word, the silence afterward. News traveled quickly in camps, even when no one dared to speak above a whisper. Elise Bauer lay on the lower bunk near the back wall. She was 48, though illness had made her look older. Her cheeks had sunk inward. Her lips were gray. Sweat darkened the blanket beneath her neck. Each breath came with a shallow scrape, as if something inside her chest had become rough. Anna knelt beside her. Elise, she said softly. The woman's eyes opened halfway. Anna lifted the cup. Steam touched Elise's face. Slowly, she broke the bread into pieces no larger than buttons and soaked them in the soup until they softened. Then she fed Elise one piece at a time from the edge of the tin cup. Not quickly, not desperately, with the patient movements of someone who had learned in field hospitals that saving a person sometimes began with convincing the body it was allowed to live. The other women watched. No one spoke. Outside, boots moved across the yard. Reed's voice had disappeared. Whitmore's had too. There was only the faint clatter of bowls, the cough of the cookhouse stove, the wind pressing against the boards. Elise swallowed twice, then turned her face away. Anna touched her forehead. Too hot. She set the cup down and pulled back the blanket. The woman's dress was soaked through at the collar. Her hands trembled beneath the wool. When Anna pressed 2 fingers below her jaw, the pulse beat fast and thin. This was not ordinary camp sickness. She looked toward the door. Private Collins stood there, uncertain, holding his rifle like it suddenly embarrassed him. Please, Anna said. He stiffened. Prisoners did not usually say please to him. Not like that. Not without fear in it. What is it? She needs medical. Now. Collins looked back toward the yard. Inspection is morning. Anna's expression did not change. She will not wait until morning. The same words again. This time there was no argument in them. Only knowledge. Collins hesitated, then ran. He found Whitmore near the ration table, speaking in a low voice to Reed. The captain stood rigid, face closed, hands behind his back. The spilled soup had already begun to disappear into the mud. Sir, Collins said. The sick woman. Keller says it is urgent. Reed turned sharply. Of course she does. Whitmore looked at the boy. What did she say? That the woman won't make morning, sir. Reed exhaled through his nose. Prisoners dramatize illness for better quarters. Whitmore kept his eyes on Collins. Does she appear ill? Yes, sir. How ill? Collins swallowed. Like my mother before pneumonia took her. That changed the air. Whitmore looked toward Barack 3. Then he looked at Reed. Fetch the medical orderly. Sir, with respect, now. Reed left. Not quickly enough to seem obedient. Not slowly enough to be insubordinate. The orderly arrived 10 minutes later, carrying a leather bag darkened by rain. He was a tired man named Harris, older than most privates, with spectacles that kept sliding down his nose. He entered the barack expecting fever, hunger, perhaps lice. Anna met him at Elise's bunk. She is septic, she said. Harris looked at her. You know that word? I worked in a military hospital. Assistant, your file says. Yes. He examined Elise. Pulse, skin, breathing. The smell from an old wound near her hip, badly cleaned before transport, now angry beneath the bandage. Harris's face tightened. Anna noticed. So did Whitmore, who had come to the doorway but remained outside, as if the threshold belonged to someone else. Harris removed the bandage. The woman on the bunk moaned. Anna reached for her hand and held it down gently, not restraining, anchoring. The wound was worse than the orderly had expected. Redness had spread in dark lines beneath the skin. Infection moving outward. Quietly. Efficiently. Like war after the armistice. Harris turned to Whitmore. She needs cleaning, boiling water, carbolic if we have it, fresh linen, and rest away from the others. Reed, standing behind the colonel, said nothing. Whitmore did not look at him. "Give Keller what she asks for," he said. Harris paused. "Sir." Whitmore's eyes stayed on Anna. "She saw it before we did." The sentence entered the barrack like heat entering cold hands. Anna lowered her gaze to Elise Bauer, not in submission, but concentration. Within minutes, water was set to boil. Sheets were torn into strips. A lamp was brought in. The women moved aside. Collins held the basin with both hands while steam rose into his face. Anna washed her burned fingers first. Then she went to work. Outside, Colonel Whitmore stood in the darkening yard and listened. Water bubbling. Cloth tearing. A woman whispering in German to another woman who might still live. The camp no longer sounded like a place being managed. It sounded like a place being judged. By midnight, the camp had grown quiet in the way exhausted places grow quiet. Not peaceful, only emptied. The rain returned after 11, soft at first, then steady. It tapped against the roof of Barack 3, slid down the black windows, gathered along the seams of the tarpaulin stretched over the supply crates. In the yard, the lanterns burned low, each flame trembling inside wet glass. Shadows moved when guards passed, then settled back into mud. Inside the barack, Elise Bauer lived. That was all anyone could say. She had survived the first cleaning, the fever spiking once so violently that her body arched from the bunk, and 2 women had to hold her shoulders down. Anna had worked through it without raising her voice. She spoke German in a low thread, wiped sweat from Elise's face, checked her pulse, changed the soaked cloth beneath her hip, and asked for more hot water before anyone thought to offer it. Harris, the medical orderly, stopped treating her like a prisoner before the hour was over. He did not say so. He simply began handing instruments to her handle first. Scissors, forceps, bandage roll, lamp, small things, clear things. Trust, in wartime, rarely announced itself. It changed the direction of a hand. Colonel Whitmore watched from the doorway until Harris told him the woman needed air, not officers. Whitmore stepped back at once. He stood under the narrow overhang while rain gathered on the brim of his cap. He should have returned to the administration hut. There were reports to sign, transfers to confirm, ration shortages to record in careful language that made hunger look temporary and clerical. He stayed. Through the broken window, he could see Anna moving between bunks. Her sleeves were rolled to the elbow. Her hair had loosened from its knot and clung damply against her cheek. The burn across her fingers had reddened, but she used the hand anyway, carefully, without complaint. Once, when the lamp guttered, she shielded the flame with her palm until Collins brought another match. Whitmore looked at that hand. Earlier, Soup had scalded it because one of his officers wanted obedience to look like surrender. The thought remained with him. It would not leave. At 1:30, Harris came out rubbing his eyes beneath his spectacles. "She may last the night," he said. Whitmore nodded. "And Keller?" Harris glanced back into the barack. "She knows what she's doing." It was not praise. Not exactly. It was the reluctant admission of a professional man who had seen skill and could not file it under enemy. Whitmore took off his cap and looked across the yard. The camp slept badly around him. Coughs rose from the men's barracks. A horse stamped near the transport shed. Somewhere beyond the wire, a dog barked twice and stopped. Germany lay in darkness, defeated but not quiet, full of ruins that still held warm ash. "Find her a blanket when she is finished," Whitmore said. Harris looked at him. "Yes, sir." But Anna did not finish. Near dawn, when the sky had begun to pale behind the wire, Whitmore found her still awake. She was sitting on an overturned crate just inside the barack door, holding a cup of cold tea no one had seen her drink. Elise slept behind her. Not easily, but breathing. Whitmore stepped into the doorway. Anna rose at once. "Sit," he said. She remained standing. He did not repeat himself. For a while they listened to the ring. Then Whitmore looked at her bandaged fingers. "You should have let Harris treat that. It is small." It was not small when it happened. Anna lowered her eyes to the cup. No, there was no accusation in the answer. That made it worse. Whitmore reached into his coat pocket and took out something wrapped in brown paper. He had retrieved it from the confiscated property box after midnight. He had stood over the open drawer for several seconds before closing his hand around it. He placed the packet on the crate between them. Anna looked at it, then at him. "Open it," he said. She unfolded the paper. The silver spoon lay inside. Bent handle. Dark bowl. the initials almost gone. For the first time since he had seen her, Anna's face lost its stillness. Only for a second, but enough. Her fingers touched the initials. "My mother," she said. Whitmore nodded. "I know. You do not know." The words came quickly, sharper than she intended. Whitmore accepted them. "No," he said. "I don't." That surprised her more than denial would have. The rain softened. Anna wrapped the spoon again, slowly, as if the paper itself had become sacred. She did not thank him. Not then. Gratitude would have made the moment smaller. Whitmore understood that somehow. He looked toward Elise's bunk. "You saved her life." Anna shook her head. "I helped her keep it." Whitmore stood very still. It was the kind of sentence that did not ask to be remembered. So he remembered it. Outside, morning came gray over the camp. The first whistle had not yet blown. The prisoners had not yet formed their lines. For a few minutes, there was no command, no roll call, no English or German, no victor or defeated. Only a woman holding her mother's spoon. And a British colonel beginning, too late, to understand that power was not the same as authority. By the time Elise Bauer's fever broke, the camp had begun to change in ways too small for reports. No order announced it. No notice was painted on the board. The rules remained where they had always been, black letters running slightly from rain. Roll call still came at 6. Bowls were still counted. Work details still formed in straight lines beneath the watch of British guards with rifles on their shoulders. But the waiting changed. That was the first thing Anna noticed. Sick prisoners were no longer told automatically to wait until morning. Harris began checking Barack 3 before breakfast, his leather bag knocking against his knee, his spectacles clouded by steam from the cookhouse. Colin started carrying extra hot water without being asked. Once, when an old man from the men's compound collapsed near the latrines, 2 guards lifted him by the arms instead of ordering him up. No one called it kindness. In a military camp, kindness sounded too much like weakness. They called it procedure. Whitmore signed the amendments himself. Additional medical observation for weakened prisoners. Reduced exposure during rain. Names to be recorded in full when known. Personal effects to be reviewed individually, not discarded in groups. The language was dry, official, almost bloodless. But Anna understood what had happened. A door had opened somewhere. Not wide, not enough for freedom, but enough for air. Captain Reed noticed it too. He carried the changes like an insult folded inside his uniform. He obeyed Whitmore because disobedience would damage his career, but obedience did not soften him. When he passed Anna in the yard, his eyes moved over her as if she were a clerical error that had not yet been corrected. Anna did not look away. That made it worse for him. On the 4th morning after Elise's fever broke, Reed entered Barack 3 during inspection. Harris was changing Elise's bandage while Anna held the lamp. "She is still exempt from labor?" Reed asked. Harris did not look up. "Yes." "For how long?" "Until I say otherwise." Reed's mouth tightened. "You are very confident for an orderly." Harris tied the bandage with clean hands. "I am confident in infection." The women in the barack kept their faces blank. But the silence had warmth in it. Reed turned to Anna. "And Keller?" "She assists me," Harris said. "I did not ask you." Anna lowered the lamp slightly. "I do what I am told." "Do you?" The question hung there. Whitmore appeared in the doorway before Anna could answer. He had not planned to enter. He had been walking the yard after reviewing transfer lists when he heard Reed's tone through the boards. The barack stiffened. Reed stepped back. "Sir." Whitmore took in the scene quickly. Harris at the bunk. Elise awake, but weak. Anna with the lamp. Reed standing too close to a point he did not need to make. "Captain Reed," Whitmore said, "the East Fence inventory is overdue." Reed understood dismissal when it was dressed as work. "Yes, sir." He left with his boots, striking the wooden floor harder than necessary. Whitmore remained. The lamp flame moved in Anna's hand. "You need not provoke him," Whitmore said. Anna looked at Elise, not at him. "I did not." "No," Whitmore said after a moment. "You rarely do." That was the closest he came to apology. Later that day, transfer orders arrived from British headquarters. Several female prisoners were to be moved south to a larger holding facility for processing and eventual repatriation review. Anna Keller's name was 3rd on the list. Whitmore read it twice. There was no reason to object. She was healthy enough to move. Her file was complete. Her presence in Lübeck had become administratively unnecessary, which was the cleanest kind of ending the army knew how to make. He signed the document. Then he sat for several minutes with the pen still in his hand. Outside his window, Anna crossed the yard carrying folded linen to the infirmary. Collins walked beside her with a basin of boiled water. They did not speak. They did not need to. Their steps had found the rhythm of ordinary work. Whitmore watched until they disappeared behind the infirmary door. The next morning, the transport truck waited at the gate. The women chosen for transfer stood in line with their bundles. The air was clear for once. Thin sunlight touched the wire and made each strand shine. Anna wore the same patched coat she had arrived in. The sleeve had been mended with neat, dark stitches. In her hand, she held the brown paper packet containing the spoon. Whitmore came to the line before Reed could begin the count. He stopped in front of Anna. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "You will be given medical work at the next facility, if they have any sense." Anna's mouth changed slightly. Not a smile. The memory of one. Commanders do not always have sense. Collins looked down quickly. Whitmore almost smiled too. Almost. He reached into his coat and took out a folded paper. It was a pass, signed and stamped, authorizing Anna Keller to retain one personal item of family origin during transfer. The spoon. Without it, some clerk at the next camp might confiscate it again. With it, even bureaucracy would have to pause. Anna read the paper. Her fingers tightened. "Why?" she asked. Whitmore looked past her, toward the truck, toward the road, toward a country that had taught him too late how much could be lost while men followed orders. "Because not everything taken is security," he said. Anna folded the paper carefully and placed it inside her coat. Then she looked at him directly. Sometimes command means knowing when not to break what is already wounded. The words struck him with the force of something final. The guard called for boarding. Anna stepped onto the truck without looking back. Only when the engine started did she turn once, not to Reed, not to the camp, but to Whitmore. She lifted the hand that held the spoon. Small gesture. No wave. Just proof that it remained. Then the truck moved through the gate and onto the wet road south. Whitmore stood until the sound faded. Behind him, the camp resumed. Roll call. Orders. Boots in mud. But something in him did not resume. Something stayed at the gate, watching a German prisoner leave with a bent silver spoon and more dignity than any army could issue. For 23 years, Colonel Edward Whitmore kept the spoon in the bottom drawer of his desk. Not with medals. Not with photographs. Not with the folded maps of Normandy, Belgium, and northern Germany that his son once tried to organize and then abandoned because the pencil marks meant nothing to him. The spoon stayed alone, wrapped in brown paper that had grown soft at the creases. Sometimes months passed without Whitmore touching it. Then, without warning, on a morning of rain or fog or winter light, he would unlock the drawer and find it waiting where memory always waited. Small, bent, darkened at the bowl. Too ordinary for anyone else to understand. His wife, Eleanor, asked him about it only once. A souvenir? Whitmore had looked at the spoon for a long time. No, he said. She did not ask again. After the war, people wanted clean stories. They wanted victory in proper shape. Flags. Speeches. Evil defeated. Good restored. Men came home and learned to speak of battles as if battles were places they had visited, not whether they still carried under their skin. Whitmore tried to do the same. He attended ceremonies. He stood for photographs. He shook hands with mayors and listened to young officers speak of strategy in rooms where no one smelled mud. He learned which memories could be told at dinner and which ones emptied a table. Anna Keller belonged to the second kind, not because the story was grand, because it was small enough to be true. A cup of soup, a command, a woman refusing to give her knees. Years changed the world around him. Germany rebuilt. Britain tightened its belt and then slowly breathed again. Children born after the war grew tall enough to ask questions their parents answered poorly. Old enemies became allies in newspapers. Men who had once pointed rifles across wire now exchanged signatures across conference tables. But Whitmore never learned what became of Anna Keller. He wrote once to a records office in Germany. The reply came 3 months later, polite and incomplete. Too many displaced persons. Too many destroyed files. Too many women named Keller. No confirmed address. He folded the letter and placed it beneath the spoon. That was all. By 1968, his hands trembled when he buttoned his cuffs. The doctor called it age. Whitmore did not argue. He had seen men lose hands, legs, faces, names. A tremor seemed too minor a complaint for a man who had survived long enough to become old. Still, the spoon became harder to polish. On the November morning Peter found him in the study, Whitmore held it longer than usual. The boy stood beside the desk, listening, no longer frowning. Outside, rain made the garden glassy and gray. So she was brave? Peter asked. Whitmore considered the word. Brave was what people said when they wanted to make danger simpler. Brave belonged to medals, headlines, and school essays. Anna Keller had not looked like bravery. She had looked hungry, burned, exhausted, alone in mud. She was exact, Whitmore said. Peter did not understand. Whitmore turned the spoon over in his palm. She knew what could be taken from her, he said. Food, property, freedom, safety. She knew all that. But she also knew what had to be surrendered voluntarily. And she would not volunteer it. The boy was quiet. The mantel clock ticked. Whitmore looked toward the window, but the study had already disappeared. He was back at the gate outside Lübeck, watching a truck move south on a wet road. Anna's hand lifted once. The spoon caught the morning light. Then she was gone. He had commanded hundreds of men, signed orders, managed prisoners, sent reports through channels that no longer existed. Yet the lesson that remained had come from a woman with no rank, no weapon, no country strong enough to protect her. That was what humbled him most. Not that she had defied Reed. That would have been easy to remember. What stayed was what came after. She fed the sick woman. She cleaned the wound. She accepted the spoon without making gratitude into submission. She left without asking to be remembered. And still, he remembered. Peter touched the edge of the desk. What did she say again? Whitmore looked at the spoon. The words had lived in him for 23 years. Not loud. Never loud. Just present, like a line carved beneath the surface of a man. She said, he answered, "You may take the food. You may take the spoon. But I will not give you my knees." Peter repeated nothing. Some sentences were not meant to be repeated quickly. Whitmore wrapped the spoon again in the old brown paper and placed it in the boy's hand. Peter looked startled. "Grandfather, keep it." But it was hers. Yes. His voice grew softer. And because it was hers, it should not die with me. The boy held the packet carefully. Outside, the rain slowed. Whitmore leaned back in his chair, tired suddenly, but clear. She had no army left, he said. No flag above her. No court to defend her. But she still owned one thing war could not confiscate. Peter waited. Whitmore closed his eyes. Her dignity. The room settled around the word. Not like an ending. Like a standard. And somewhere beyond memory, beyond rain, beyond the mud of a temporary camp outside Lübeck, Anna Keller remained as she had been that afternoon. Thin, hungry, unarmed, standing straight while men with power learned, too late, what power was not.